And now, ladies and gentlemen, unpacking and diving right into the next one. Our fourth session is themed as Looking Ahead, Pakistan's Path to the Digital Economy. And it puts two of our most favorite subjects together. Of course, digital inclusion, digital vibrancy, connectivity, and of course, how and why and in what way can it impact the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic panel bringing this conversation to you as well. First up, may I take this opportunity of inviting our moderator for this conversation. Please welcome the Country Managing Director, Pakistan and Afghanistan for SAP, Mr. Saquib Ahmad. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO, MD, and the member of the board at the Systems Limited, Mr. Asif Peer. Please also join me in welcoming the Country Director, Pakistan for Acumen and a board member at the Bank Alfalah Limited. Please welcome Dr. Ayesha Khan. Please also put your hands together to welcome the President and the CEO of NdcTech, Ammara Masood. And last but definitely not the least, please welcome the Managing Director of Daraz.pk, Mr. Ehsan. Ladies and gentlemen, this one is focused on the digital economy, which to most of us is a mystery. While we are all digitally connected, huddled on our cell phones, how economy and the digitization is shaping up is of key concern. Many believe that we have also leapfrogged in the last 3 years what seemed impossible, and people had hesitance and resistance. We have sort of fast forwarded into this age, and that's perhaps one of the only silver linings of COVID. But let's see what this conversation is going to unpack. So Saquib, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think it's an honor to be present with these ladies and gentlemen or guys over here who are leading the digital initiative overall. I think let's talk about a little bit about digital economy first. You know, how many of us are using cash anymore? How many of us are just doing the digital transactions? I think the use of wallet has gone into mobile wallet and e-wallet today. Everything that we are doing is adding a digital and e-part in our day-to-day lives. Going on to online shoppings, to do their transfers through the banks, through the online transactions, talking about the cryptocurrencies overall, and everything getting digital. That's what our lives have become. We are getting more easy because we have been provided all the interfaces and availability of all these digital interfaces to move forward on our lives on day-to-day basis. That's what we are becoming, and as we will move forward, and if we go to the developed countries, we are already going to the next level as we go along. And talking about it, first of all, and Asif, starting from you as you are on my left on that very front, the word digital economy, what does it mean for the people in Pakistan, and in the whole context of the global digital economy, where do we stand and what should be the next steps for us?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum everyone, good afternoon. Thanks to be part of this esteemed panel. Thank you, Asfar, for again hosting a great event. So I would like to say, what is, how do you see the digital? I think we hear digital transformation, digital economy, anything with E and D. This is, everybody is focused, right? But what it is, I think I would like to just, for common understanding, the simple word, when you talk about digital, you have to think about your customers, your partners, your vendors, how you can serve them through transformation of your business, how you can make your business a composable business architecture versus the traditional departmental architecture of your organization. So that's the simple, it's a simple definition, right? Anything we see today, digital, if you keep customers in mind, you will revolve and transform your solution, your products, your organization around that. And that is the first step. And then you ask the second question, do I optimize or transform? should I optimize, and what is the difference between these two things? Once you optimize your businesses, it means you are looking at, like, of course, operation excellence, seeing short-term profitability, and so on and so forth. When you really transform, we talk about how do I transform my business, right? Then you are talking about, in the digital economy, you're thinking that how can I disrupt this space? What is my organization place in this world? Where do I exist in my economy? What can I make a huge disruption that revolves my industry and my customers? Because then your mindset is focused on the customer side, and you think about long-term profitability and sustainability versus the short-term. So as Saquib asked, that where do we stand today, right? I think we, as I think Sidra just mentioned as well, yes, last few years and COVID as a silver lining, we have really improved as the country from a digitization perspective, from e-commerce perspective. Ehsan will, at the end, will of course shed the light that what they have seen, the robustness in the B2B and B2C space in e-commerce, where most of the people have started using the wallets and so on and so forth. So yes, things have improved, but are we there where we need to be? I think it's a long way, because right now is still most of the organization in our country are thinking about optimization. How do I optimize and make the money today? Versus transforming the organization and looking at the holistic view and looking at the long-term vision, that how can you have a composable business architecture versus the traditional architecture. So I think this is my view. Of course, we have a lot of potential, and there are small businesses, large businesses out here as well. As per from the Forbes survey, what Forbes has identified, that 49% of the decision makers believe that technology will create the level playing field between the large and small organizations. So we have to start thinking technology as a competitive edge and differential advantage versus just as an expense side and thinking it differently, right? So that's once the country, and once especially the public sector of our country, when they think about the citizens and transform themselves, that how can we ease the life of our consumers and our citizen services, then the digital transformation will evolve and people will see it through, and it will work. And it will create a lot of employment and so on and so forth. So the digital economy, it is very important. The private sector and the public sector transformation goes hand in hand, because that will create the infrastructure, that will create the robustness, that will create the jobs, that will change our country's, I would say, a digital future. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I think Asif brought a good point about optimization and transformation. And I think this is important for the companies as they are moving and starting their digital transformation journeys. It's important to make sure that how they are part of the digital economy, this should be at the forefront for them. Moving on over there, and both Ayesha and Ammara, first of all, I would like to welcome you to the most diversified panel of this show till now, because we have the maximum females on the stage. It has not happened since morning till then. Yeah. So Ayesha, coming to you, and I think just talking about, since morning we have been talking about specifically Pakistan, its export, and we all understand that Pakistan is mainly an agricultural country. How do you see this agriculture part of that one and connecting it to the digital economy? How we can connect the two things, because that is the part that will help us in growing overall for the Pakistan in end-to-end prosperity that we are seeing today.
Okay. Well, so I may be biased here, but I don't think we can talk about a future without talking about agriculture and food systems. This is true all over the world. it is even more true in Pakistan. And so I'll take a minute to just sketch out what I'm talking about here. Now, we may be familiar with the numbers that 1/5 of our GDP comes from agriculture, so roughly $60 billion, but actually your entire economy is dependent on agriculture. Upstream, downstream, it connects to large-scale manufacturing, it connects to everything. So unless we can figure out how to solve for effective agriculture, value chains that make sense, I don't think we have, when we're talking about the future, we should be a little more worried. Now, where do we stand here? Unfortunately, in Pakistan, our contribution to agriculture over time has been going down. And through decades of underinvestment in our value chain, what we're left with is 90% of your farmers are very small farmers who are cultivating on less than 5 acres of land. And you'd ask why this is relevant. It's relevant because when you're a really small farmer, you unfortunately cannot access the different technologies that are available to actually optimize. So large-scale agriculture is no longer viable. You are under-investing. You do not have access to the highest quality seed. You're relying on traditional methods of production. And what that translates to finally for us, as an agrarian country, Saquib, what you mentioned, unfortunately, we're now in a situation where 90 million Pakistanis, and this is a huge number, are food insecure. About 1 in 3 of our children are stunted, which means that they do not even if you provide them with the highest quality education, you will not be able to get the same outcome. So this is an emergency, and we need to solve for it. And this is where really figuring out how do you crack this open, how do you optimize it, this is where digital and technology comes in, because across the entire value chain, when you talk about pre-production, you talk about the problems of small farmers, access to credit, this is where you have models in which technology can enable access to effective credit, where you can actually look at farmers, assess their credit worthiness, figure out what sort of credit you can extend, what type of inputs you give them. You can actually assess land quality, figure out what you need to plant, when you need to plant, and how you need to irrigate. And we're missing our friends from Jazz and Telenor here today. I wish they were here. But they tell you about the fact that if you look at the fact that 80% of our population, 85 I think by now, has access to mobile phones, this is a tremendously powerful platform through which you can get to your farmers who are there even on the smaller farms and provide them critical information on what to plant, when, what the weather patterns look like. You move further along on the production side. Again, this is also partially climate change. We're looking at extreme water shortages. Pakistan is also poised to become amongst the world's most water insecure nations in the next 10 years. So it is super critical for us to leverage technology to develop effective, efficient, high-value irrigation methods in which we can actually optimize the water sources. What you plant, how you plant, and finally on the post-production side, how do you actually connect buyers to sellers? How do you connect farmers to retailers, retailers to end consumers, so that in an ideal scenario, today I can look on my phone and figure out what type of tomatoes to buy, where those tomatoes were produced, and make sure that the farmer who's actually producing those tomatoes gets more of a share of the price than anyone does. So when we talk about agriculture, we talk about digital, this is not even a scenario in which this is a good to have. This truly is an emergency. We need to figure out how to do this right. We need to figure out how to do this at scale. We have to invest in entrepreneurs who are building up these solutions, because if we don't do that, unfortunately, without the right nutrition, and I started off by saying this, unless we can create food systems that guarantee nutritious, high-quality food to everyone in an affordable, effective way, I don't think we'll be able to meet any of our development goals. So I'm hopeful that we're doing this. There are people who are actually engaged in this, amazing entrepreneurs who are actually pulling out different ways and models of creating it, but it's something that requires urgent action and concerted effort all along.
I think, thank you very much, Asha. I think you touched this topic in quite in detail and very rightfully pointed out on that front. Agriculture being the backbone of our country over here, and we are talking about all these digital transformation journeys. It's a big set of opportunity, and it's not about the opportunity for the people. It's the need of our people as well. Because if we have to grow, and we have to grow on the agriculture that we are talking about, all the points I mentioned by Ayesha make absolute sense, and we need to make sure that we make best use out of that and make it part of the digital economy there. Thank you, Ayesha. Moving on to Ammara. Ammara, you have been doing on the backbone system of the banking for quite a long time. Let me go straight on that one and say, in order to be part of that digital economy, what is required to be needed to be changed in the banking system that will make our path to the digital economy on a very fast track pace?
Yes, thank you very much, Saquib. I'll take you a little bit back in time, just for everyone to understand how banking has evolved and what the future looks like. So I have been in digital transformations for many years, almost 28 years. And one thing which is good about digital transformation is that it keeps going on. I mean, everybody is always transforming. It depends on how differently you are transforming. But in every decade, there has been different aspects of transformation which have taken place. So if we look at banking, banking in the last 10 years, has had great strides in terms of digitization. I think the banks which were looking towards enabling their different channels, we were always looking at traditional banks where branch banking was one of the most done thing, and there was digitization going on in branches. But in the last 10 years, what we have seen is that there has been a huge acceleration in terms of moving from branches to the channels for every bank. And if you look at, there are about 64% of the banks globally who are at some stage of digital transformation in their journeys. And all of these banks, who are working on their different transformations, will know that, there is a stage which is right now for them. There's a fork that they have to decide whether they should focus on digital transformation for the back end, like Saquib has mentioned, that should they look at the railroad and the platform, or should they look at the customer primacy? Because as you have seen that many of the platform companies have now taken over the ownership of the customer, and banks are really becoming more of the back-end companies where they need to provide financial services. So what I see for the next 10 years is that there will be very few banks, and I would say that only big banks which will be in both the spaces where they are performing, where they are providing the platform and the rails, and they are doing the engagement and the primacy with the customer. But other banks will mainly become the platform and the rails because there are so many enterprises, so many small and medium businesses and consumers who actually need just, the financial payments and all of the different user journeys to be embedded as part of what they are doing. And I think you can see examples very well of recent example of the buy now, pay later use case, which has really taken off, both from, in the payments industry where PayPal introduced this concept of buy now, pay later, and now with Apple Pay and Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs is providing the platform and the rails, and Apple Pay basically owns the customer, which is being able to provide that particular service.
Thank you very much. I think you talked about exactly the point that the changes in the digital transformation journey of the banks is required to be happen now, because all what the world is going on that very front. I still remember in recent times I was shown one photograph which was of a coffee shop, and where some people were just sitting, and they asked me to say, can you judge what is this place? And I said, it's a coffee shop. And they said, no, it's a branch of a bank. and they have built it in this way because this is how the world is moving. It's a moving place. They come over here, the customers come over here. That's how the world is changing around on that very front. So I totally agree with you that this transformation journey is on the back-end system as well as on the front end that we are talking about. Thank you for that one. Ehsan, moving to you. I mean, you know the best how the online platforms are being run in Pakistan. Daraz being a great success story overall. I just want to understand that, do you feel, because you touch the complete chain, you are coming from a supply chain, you are going to the end customer, you are touching the banking sector on the back end, you are touching all the parts of the digital economy that we call today. Do you feel they are good enough in Pakistan? And what are the changes that you feel will help you expand the business and the digital economy in Pakistan?
Thank you very much for having me. And I think one of our main focus points has been that despite the fact that digitization is continuing, and we had, obviously some of the advantages from the COVID era, there are issues and concerns that we always have to try to address. So, whether it starts from the front end of the supply chain, where you have your sellers getting educated and understanding what a marketplace is, whether your customers understanding how to shop online, view is, how to ask questions. The idea is that at every touch point, you have to evolve significantly. So, we work very closely actually on every one of those touch points. So a clear example is, we work very closely with TCS, for example, and it's one of our key partners on the logistics side. And both TCS and us have evolved in how we look at logistics and how we have really evolved on the customer behavior. Logistics traditionally has always been an envelope delivery model, right? Where there's no return journey, there's no customer that says, "Ab kal aayega," right? And that entire reverse journey is never needed to be built. And all those evolutions have been a function of time and effort to get us there. There's still obviously a lot of headway, and I would say the three main challenges still remain logistics, digital payments, and customer trust. And on the customer trust side, it's a function of obviously having other marketplaces also emerge, also provide an exceptional customer experience, because when a customer has a poor experience in an industry which is already in its infancy, it's very difficult for them to try it again. So you need to really make sure that whether it's the return journeys, whether it's the refunds, we have to do on every leg of it. For example, if there's a return that's filed, we now, for example, at Daraz, will go pick it up. But we also need to work with the banks to make sure that the refund is actually processed faster. So on every leg, I would say that there's a lot of effort required, but the three fundamental legs that are important, like I said, are digital payments, logistics, and the customer trust. So as long as we can solve the nuances of those three, then we will hopefully be able to expedite the growth.
I think you touched the very, very important point of overall talking about the digital payments. And I think that is one part where we are looking at today. In order to move forward in this digital and IT world, the digital payments are becoming more and more necessary. And that, I think the customer experience, I think that is also another key today, because I remember I attended one of the workshops of Emirates, and they told me on that very day that the whole thing starts for our journey when the customer thinks about of buying a ticket and opens our website. They said that's where our customer experience starts. Although our main business is getting one person to another place, from one place to another on the plane, but our customer experience starts from that very point till the point he starts thinking and goes to that point. I think that's what you are referring to as well. Thank you, Ehsan, for that one. Asif, coming back to you, you have been part on Pakistan level, you have been part of the Prime Minister team as well, a think tank in terms of the IT side as well. If we have to take the digital economy to the next level, and you talked about the public sector and the private sector also, what are the three things that will you request the chairman of the BOI today sitting over today to get it corrected in the ecosystem and in the law today that will help the digital economy to run faster today?
I think, hello. I think it's, there are, of course, we can focus on three things, but to be honest with you, what I believe is that it's not about, we need a lot of things from government in this sector, right? So it's already, we have enough. I think what we really need to focus as an industry to take more risks, and the entrepreneurs, like, and also the business community, the like who and who of Pakistan, they start investing into this sector. They start acquiring companies, they start opening up and helping. So industry needs to transform and take the leap of faith, and because there is a lot of opportunity. As far as the government is concerned, I think there are key thing for our industry is infrastructure, whether it's a digital infrastructure, where I think, of course, the telco, from a telco to broadband to voice to anything, and to also the connectivity across, because now, as we know that work from home and remote working, it's natural, right? So freelancers, the way they are growing in this country is phenomenal. So how would they grow if, so digital infrastructure has a lot of room for improvement. And also, in addition, the physical infrastructure, what to showcase when somebody comes and say that I really need to put up my data center, to put up my offshore center, to put up my outsourcing centers. Do you have that physical infrastructure to house 10,000 people? Just as an example, or even 1,000. Where do we showcase that Pakistan has a digital internet cities and knowledge parks and media cities and so on and so forth? Until you show something, nobody can believe it, right? That we are focused on this digital economy and so on and so forth. And the third thing is, in our sector, basically is an HR and the leadership, right? You have been listening and talking about the leadership since morning, and you will hear more about the future leaders. That's the challenge that in this country we need to produce leaders and the people who can own and take the responsibility and take the companies to the next level, whether in the private sector or in the IT sector. So that's, and the development of youth, like saying that, yeah, we can do our exports to X times and Y times in numbers. Where is the talent? What do we need to do? Forget about the past, because we can always criticize. But what we can start today so we can reap the benefit in the future. So HR, training, enablement, where the government can play the vital role, because they have an accessibility, they have platforms, they have universities, they can go back to the universities which are producing computer science people and asking them to produce the relevant people, making sure the quality is better, running the associate diploma programs, shortening the bachelor's in computer science degrees to 3 years versus 4 years, and so on and so forth. There are many things that can be done which can create the ecosystem and the environment where we can say, yeah, we are not just 220 million people, but we have talented people. We know there are 50 million or so, whatever number we can come up with, who knows how to code, who knows how to pick up the phone in the call center operations, and so on and so forth. So look at that way. HR is the key. If we have that, then I'm so confident in today's world, there is a scarcity. We all know that talented people and the leaders are in scarcity globally, not in Pakistan, everywhere. So we will get that opportunity to boost our exports, to boost our economy, if we have the right talent. So that's another one. And the last point that I would like to highlight is, we need at a government level is an economic narrative, right? This is really important. Why Pakistan? Everyone from PM to BOI to attract the FDI, to attract the MNCs, to attract the companies from the group to set up and consider Pakistan as an outsourcing destination, because we have a cost advantage, we have communication, but there needs to be an economic narrative which everyone owns it and speak to it, because export culture cannot be created without selling. You have to sell your brand, you have to sell your country, you have to sell why us and not everyone else, why countries outside should look at Pakistan. So there needs to be an economic narrative and a strong branding exercise need to happen, which should be supported by the consulting companies, not just by Pakistan government or industry. So I think once we do all of these things, I think nobody can stop. There is a huge opportunity, and I don't think so. This is one of the industry which really doesn't need any government support, no subsidy required, no government support required. We just need a better infrastructure, ecosystem, law and order, branding, promotion, and I think things will take leapfrog from here. That's what I'm very positive about.
Thank you very much, Asif. I think you touched many different points, but the key points is about we have a lot of human resource, and we need to have talented human resource for us. That's something key, and the brand Pakistan needs to be visible all across. I think as long as we are not able to make that brand Pakistan visible to the people outside the world, then the reach and the exports that we are talking about will not be possible out over there. So let's work on that brand Pakistan demand that we are talking today. Ayesha, you touched in your first discussion a little bit about climate. So I will go into detail on that, man. Climate change is one of the key issues on the table today, and the world is talking about. How do you see in Pakistan, knowing the digital economy can help achieving Pakistan's sustainability targets and sustainability vision as well? How do you see where were we standing and what are we required to do to achieve that sustainability?
So I'm so going to be the doom and gloom lady here after Asif's positive comments. I'll be like, oh my God, it's disastrous. But here's where we are, right? Pakistan is the 5th most vulnerable country in the world to climate change, and I want us to really think about it a bit. We emit less than 0.7% of greenhouse gases that have caused this whole problem. So the world has actually moved, the developed countries have emitted, they have emitted such a level of carbon in the atmosphere that temperatures have gone up beyond the level of sustainability. And Pakistan, where, by the way, geographically positioned so that we are neighbored by India and China, which are the 2nd and 3rd most polluting economies in the world also. What that means is that when the world has a temperature increase of 1%, 1 degree Celsius, ours is 1 degree Celsius, even more than that. And why this is disastrous for us? So again, 2/3 of our population lives in rural areas. And I'll go back to farming. Again, our population, our people are actually involved in farming. We are an agrarian economy. When temperatures go up, what does that mean? I mean, obviously, your existing value chains that are already very low productivity. I already said, because of the fact that we have small farmers, we don't have technology, forget digitization, we're not even mechanized in the farming side, right? So we're really, really behind. But when temperature changes, when water scarcity happens, when actually glaciers stop producing, you then are suffering from another hit to your agriculture sector. So there are 2 parts of it. One part is obviously in which we say, look, we have to do our part in reducing emissions. Yes, again, we're responsible for less than 1% of global emissions. So of course, we will do our part in doing it, and we'll plant the trees, and we'll do everything else. But the big emergency right now, the big crisis we have is, again, of our food systems, of our food security. Because of temperature changes, the erratic weather patterns, floods, we've had 3 major floods in the past few years. Every time we have a flood, we lose about $1 billion overall because of those floods. So we're talking about a crisis here where we will not be able to feed our own population. Forget anything more esoteric or deeper than that. And we need to figure out how do we build, and we call this climate resilience, climate adaptation. There's a certain level of temperature change. Again, I keep going. We didn't cause it because, again, we're not industrialized enough to actually cause it. I don't think it was because of our policies, but we're just not there yet. So we didn't cause it, but we are on the receiving end of it. Technology-based solutions are the only way in which we are able to then create sustainable outcomes for our nation and for the most vulnerable, for our fishermen, for our farmers. How do we set in place, again, I refer to modern agriculture technologies in which we use IT models to diagnose weather patterns as they're changing rapidly. We can cascade that information through to farmers. We can have drought-resistant seeds. We can figure out, again, we talked about there's a production production side problem, but half our produce we end up wasting anyway because we don't have the right logistics set up in place, we don't have cold storage in place. So in order, and all of this, again, digital models, IT, artificial intelligence, all of these technologies, blockchain models, allow you to solve for what would have been an insurmountable challenge maybe a few decades back. These are some things that are very solvable. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of this is urgent. Climate change is not something around the corner. We've already seen, I mean, we're all, Karachi, we've seen what happens to Karachi when rain patterns change over time. We've seen what happens in the northern areas. There are floods, there are earthquakes. So we need to figure out how do we do our bit to actually insulate the most vulnerable. And Asif, here I'll go back to what you said about putting our narrative out there as well. As a country who is then on the receiving end of so much of this, we need to figure out how do we actually create the right narrative around the fact that we do need to now figure out how to solve for a problem that someone else created, frankly. And at the end of the day, that's where it is. We'll be suffering. We need to take responsibility for it. But it's real. It's facing us right now. It's not decades down the road. It's today. And it's urgent. And digital models are one powerful way for dealing with it, but it's not the only one. I know we have the BOI chair here as well, so I'll say, you know, it takes a concerted effort of making sure that we have the right investment, the right legislation, the right regulatory frameworks in place so that we can actually solve for this together.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ayesha. I think that we all know this is the topic in hand. This is the problem in hand. We are not the creators of different, but as she said, we are the sufferers of this one. So it's very important for us to take the action now because this is something that will hit us. It is already hitting us. So it's more about adopting it, accepting it, and taking actions about this one. Let's not delay the actions about that. I've got the time warning, so Ammara, coming to you. I think the digital and IT side of the things, we know the talent is out over there. What is the message towards you, to the youth specifically, that if they have to be part of the digital economy, what is the kind of line education they have to follow, because the millennials and everyone, that they could be take that part in the digital economy path that Pakistan is looking at? So what is the message for them?
The clear message is that the new youth of today is already in demand, and we can see it by the numbers of freelancers that the whole world is using from Pakistan. But in terms of skill sets, I would say that invest in long-lasting skills, okay? Because technology trends will come and go, and you know, every few years there will be different waves that will come. But long-lasting skills are something that if you invest in, you will be able to switch from, you know, job to job. You will be able to become an entrepreneur. You will be able to do many different things which you can. And if I talk about, you know, 3 or 4 of the important skills which are being identified as the skills of the future, one of them is, you know, user experiences. And I think Asif and Ayesha both have talked about that, and also my friend from Daraz, that user experiences are changing radically. And this is not true only for one particular segment, but it's true for every single segment. And now you can see that from out of nowhere, this metaverse has come in, which is going to just explode, you know, the user experiences that, you know, different industries will be able to offer. And we as a country are definitely not ready for it, but this is going to be the new reality, that new things will come and we will not be ready, and therefore we have to invest in the long-lasting skills.
Thank you very much. I think skill development is the key for our youth, no doubt about that one. Ehsan, coming to you, the last question on the panel this front. We are talking about robust technologies. We are talking about customer experience. As a user of this technology and providing that to the people of Pakistan, what are the important collaborations that are required in this IT industry to take the digital economy to the next level? One thing is creating themselves. One thing is we collaborate with each other to make that end result that the digital economy and the people are looking for. So what collaborations will help overall the industry in this regard?
Sure. I think one is it starts from a change in mindset that it's not a time to fight for the pie, but it's actually a time to grow the pie. And when you look at, for example, in this last year, we've attracted significant capital in the startups in Pakistan. What we have not seen as much as is strategic joint ventures that also allow the companies that have raised money to get the strategic element in it as well. So the collaboration that's also required is for the large corporations. I would love a world in which in 2 years, the 22 names you have up there are different 22 names of companies that none of us have potentially ever heard of. And in order to do that, and for those that want to prevent that disruption, they need to sort of start looking at the companies that are emerging, that are disrupting, and not looking at them sort of in the peripheral, but actually looking at them actively and getting involved from not only the financial side, but a strategic element as well. When we look at, for example, the agri-tech space, you have a lot of companies that are raising money and that are doing great work in the agri-tech space, but it's also equally important for the large companies to get involved and facilitate that growth and be. That's on the on the side of actually being able to take the more traditional corporations to collaborate with startups. And then within startups, there's naturally, and we talked about this, is because we touch every part of the supply chain, we naturally have to be working with other players to be able to grow. And our mindset is that the more players that can work together, the faster we can grow. And so I think those two elements would sort of help the growth in the industry.
Thank you very much. I think the important part is to increase the pie. The important part is to collaborate and help each other to get to the target results that we are looking for the people. It's not about the competition anymore. It's about providing the right set of services with the right set of tools today. And that's a win-win situation for everybody because the end customer will get the output and the product that we are looking at. So I thank you very much, the complete panel, for giving all these inputs on the digital economy. And thank you for being on time as well. I think we just finished it exactly on that 0 second that we were mentioning out over there. So Sidra, over to you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen. May I request my entire panel to stay with us today. What an enlightening conversation. And I was pleasantly surprised when Ayesha touched upon the subject of climate and how digital economy, which traditionally, or the way, whenever we respond to the phrase of digital economy, we seldom think about agriculture being a part of it or food security being a part of it, but it's very intrinsic. And I love the optimism that a lot of you shared. And of course, the pie seems to be growing bigger. But is everybody getting an equitable share of the pie is another conversation, which perhaps our next panel is going to be addressing. Ladies and gentlemen, at the World Economic Forum, the Global Competitiveness Index has some alarming figures for us. It says that Pakistan ranks at 73 out of 141 countries on the ability of the active population to possess and use digital skills, which is what the panel was actually reiterating and emphasizing, that the need to build the infrastructure, have the population possess the right kind of digital skills, and indeed, creating an enabling environment for IT exports are perhaps the 3 pillars for Digital Pakistan. Before we close this session, may I once again take this opportunity of inviting our hosts and organizers up on stage. Please welcome Ms. Anam Akai from the Martin Dow Group, Air Chief Marshal Sohail Aman, who's the Chief Executive Strategic Engagements at Nutshell Group, and Ms. Rabia Ahmad, the Director and Chief Operating Officer, Nutshell Group, to please join us up on stage. May I request my panel to also step forward and come together. Ladies and gentlemen, may I also take this opportunity to invite Mr. Javed Ghulam Mohammed, the Group Managing Director and CEO of Martin Dow Group, to do the honors and present these books, please. Thank you, sir. May I request you to first present to Mr. Asif Peer, the CEO, MD, and member of the board at Systems Limited. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ayesha K. Khan, Country Director, Pakistan Acumen, and also serving as a board member for Bank Alfalah Limited. Ms. Ammara Masood, President and CEO, NdcTech. Mr. Ehsan, the Managing Director of Daraz.pk. And last but definitely not the least, our Honorable Moderator, Country Managing Director, Pakistan and Afghanistan, SAP, Mr. Saquib Ahmad. May I request you all to please step forward for a group photograph? Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Ladies and gentlemen,